I knew something was wrong the moment I saw my boss's face. His smile was way too forced, his eyes not quite meeting mine. You don't expect to get on a Tuesday morning, but that's exactly what happened. One minute I was grabbing a coffee from the break room. The next, I was being pulled into a meeting room and handed a disciplinary notice for something I didn't do. And the worst part, the person who reported me was the man I'd been falling for. My name is Kelly, I'm 24 years old, and until about 3 months ago, I thought I was living my dream. I landed a marketing analyst job at a major firm in Chicago just a year out of college. The pay was decent, the benefits were solid, and I was actually excited to go to work most days. I worked hard, stayed late when needed, and tried to be the kind of team player people could rely on. My supervisor even told me during my 6-month review that I was on track for a promotion. Everything felt like it was moving in the right direction. That's when joined our team. He was charming, funny, and somehow knew exactly how to make everyone like him. He started a few months after me, supposedly with less experience, but he adapted fast, too fast. He was the kind of guy who brought in just because and always complimented shoes or the new intern's haircut. He was smooth, I'll give him that. At first, I didn't think much of it. Office politics were inevitable, and if someone wanted to play that game, fine. I wasn't going to. But didn't stop at and compliments. He zeroed in on me like a heat-seeking missile. At first it was small talk in the elevator, then it turned into coffee runs, then lunch breaks. Before long, we were texting after hours, sharing memes and venting about annoying clients. I didn't see the trap he was setting. Honestly, I liked the attention. It had been a while since someone made me feel seen like that. We weren't officially dating, but there was definitely something there. He even kissed me one night after a work happy hour. I remember him saying, "We're a power duo, Kelly, you and me were going places." I believed him. Fast forward 3 weeks and I'm sitting in his office being accused of accessing restricted client files without authorization. Files I never even touched. Apparently someone had submitted an anonymous complaint complete with screenshots and timestamps. My login credentials were used, but the times didn't match when I was actually working. I tried to explain, but said her hands were tied. She wasn't firing me, but I was being moved to a less sensitive role. A demotion, basically. Less pay, fewer responsibilities, and a whole lot of humiliation. I walked out of that room in a fog, found me by the elevators and asked if I was okay. He looked concerned. He even pulled me into a hug and said, "I heard something happened, are you all right?" That hug made my skin crawl, and I didn't know why at the time. But I mumbled something and went home early, my brain spinning in circles. That night I couldn't sleep, something didn't add up. The files that were accessed didn't even relate to our current projects, and whoever did it would needed my login, which I always kept private. Unless someone had used my work laptop. I'd lent it to once during a meeting when his died. Could he have done it then? The thought made my stomach turn, but even then I didn't want to believe it, not yet. The next day I noticed wasn't at his usual desk. Called for a team meeting at noon, and that's when the other shoe dropped. Had been promoted to my old position. Not just the title, but the project lead role I had been training for. The one had hinted was practically mine just a month ago. I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. Winked at me during the meeting. He actually winked. I barely heard anything else said. The entire room was clapping and congratulating him while I sat there like a statue. That night I cried, not just out of frustration or betrayal, but because I felt stupid. I had trusted him, let him in, and he used me, but I wasn't going to just sit there and take it. If thought he was smart, he hadn't seen anything yet. That was the night I decided to start digging, quietly, carefully. And I was about to discover that had a whole graveyard of skeletons he thought he'd buried. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for at first, I just knew I had to find something. Anything, a crack in the perfect image had built for himself, because no one climbs that fast without stepping on people, and he didn't just step on me, he ground me into the dirt with a smile on his face. I started by going through old emails, not just mine, but any shared threads I could access. Luckily, I still had access to our team drive and no one had changed permissions yet. I didn't do anything illegal, just reread what was already there. At first, it was all standard stuff, project updates, calendar invites, client notes, but then I found something weird. There was a thread from 2 months ago where had volunteered to take over one of my reports while I was out sick. I remembered being grateful at the time, thought he was doing me a favor. But when I compared the final version he submitted to the draft I'd started, I realized something. He'd barely changed anything. He submitted my work with his name on it, and that report had gotten him public praise during our next all-hands meeting. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it was something, proof that he was willing to take credit for my work. I saved a copy and kept going. The real breakthrough came about a week later. I was in the break room, pretending to scroll through my phone while waiting for the coffee machine when I overheard talking to someone on a video call. He didn't see me, he had his back turned and was packing by the window with his earbuds in. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but when I heard my name, I froze. Yeah, she's out of the way now. They moved her off the project last week, he was saying, then he laughed. I told you it would work. My heart dropped into my shoes. He kept talking, bragging about how management eats out of his hand, and how the dumb girl me changed her password. I stood there, shaking, pretending to look at an email while recording the audio on my phone. It wasn't crystal clear, but the context was undeniable. That's when I knew I had him. But I needed more. One recording, especially one without his face, might not be enough. I needed a pattern, a trail. So I started tracking his movements. Not like a stalker, more like a private investigator. I kept a little notebook and wrote down what time he arrived, when he left, which meeting rooms he used, who he talked to. I even noted when he logged into shared drives. My new role gave me some access to internal tools, and I used them to monitor file activity. Again, nothing illegal, just detailed. And he got cocky. He started slipping. One time I saw him copy a client's proprietary data onto a flash drive after hours. Another time, he left a browser window open with personal login credentials to a side business he was running on company time. I took screenshots. I saved logs. I kept everything backed up to a private folder only I could access. Every time I found something, the knot in my chest loosened just a little, but I knew I couldn't act too soon. If I made one mistake, if he caught wind that I was onto him, he'd find a way to twist it around. Again, and this time it might cost me my job for real. So I played the long game. Pretended to be friendly when I had to, smiled when he cracked dumb jokes. I even texted him occasionally like nothing had changed. He responded with the same fake charm, never suspecting that I was building a case that would bury him. The final piece came one Friday evening. Most people had already left the office, but I stayed behind under the excuse of finishing up reports. Was still around too, typing away in the conference room. I peeked through the glass door and saw him transferring files from his laptop to another device. He didn't see me watching. I waited until he left, then went into the room and checked the system logs. Sure enough, he'd transferred sensitive client data to an external device, something strictly against company policy. This time, the logs included exact timestamps and device IDs. Bulletproof. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up compiling everything, the audio recording, the emails, the screenshots, the file logs. I put it all in a folder labeled Confidential HR Review and printed a copy for myself just in case. On Monday morning, I made an appointment with the internal security team. And I walked into that office with my head held high. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I thought they'd blow me off, maybe say something polite like, "Thanks, we'll look into it," and then toss the folder in a drawer somewhere. But when I handed over the evidence and started walking them through it, everything changed. The guy from internal security, David, went from bored to laser-focused in seconds. He interrupted me twice, asking me to go back and clarify certain timestamps. He had a notepad out, scribbling furiously. When I played the recording of bragging about setting me up, David actually leaned forward, elbows on the desk, jaw tight. When I was done, he just stared at the folder for a few seconds. Then he stood up and said, "Stay here." He walked out of the room with my entire file. I sat there for 10 minutes, heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon. Was I about to get in trouble for collecting this stuff? Was I technically in the wrong? Then he came back, this time with and someone from legal. That's when I knew I'd started something serious. They asked me to go through everything again, this time slower. They even pulled up access logs on the spot, comparing them with the screenshots I'd provided. Everything matched. At one point muttered, I knew something was off, under her breath. I tried not to react. She looked embarrassed, angry even. By the time I walked out of that room, they had confiscated his company laptop and suspended his building access. And that was only the beginnings. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind. Didn't show up to work the next day. People started whispering he hadn't even cleaned out his desk. HR didn't say anything officially at first, but the tension in the office was thick enough to cut with a knife. On Wednesday, they called me back in. Was there again, this time with a completely different tone. She apologized, like a full-on, actual apology. She said, "Kelly, we owe you a serious correction, not just for what happened with your role, but for how we didn't see what was going on." Then she offered me my old position back. But I wasn't done. I told them I'd consider it, but only after I saw what they were going to do about, and I wanted it in writing. I wasn't about to let them sweep this under the rug just to make things go back to normal. David looked at me and said, "Don't worry, he's not coming back." That Friday, we got the official announcement. had been terminated for violating company policy, misuse of confidential data, and falsifying reports. They didn't say my name, but everyone in the office put two and two together. By Monday, I was the topic of every conversation. People looked at me differently, some with respect, some with a little fear. I didn't care either way. Oh, because he went out in flames. Apparently, when HR dug into his background, they found out he'd lied on parts of his resume. Exaggerated experience, fake certifications. He'd also been using company resources to run a freelance marketing gig on the side, one of our competitors no less. It was enough to not just get fired, but to potentially land him in legal trouble. And just like that, Mr. Perfect was gone. I should felt vindicated, and part of me did, but another part just felt tired. All that stress, all the manipulation, the sneaking around to protect myself, it had worn me down. I'd been fighting to prove I wasn't a liar when the real liar had been smiling at me across conference tables for months. When I finally packed up my things and moved back to my old desk, there was a sticky note waiting for me. It said, "Nice work, remind me never to cross you." No signature. But I had a guess who it was. You'd think that getting fired and publicly disgraced would be enough to make someone like disappear quietly. But no, 2 weeks after his spectacular fall from grace, I got a message from an unknown number. "Hope you're happy, you destroyed everything, I trusted you." I stared at the screen, half in disbelief, half in rage. He trusted me? The man who stole my work, sabotaged my reputation, and smiled in my face while pulling the rug out from under me was now trying to play the victim. I didn't reply, I blocked the numbers. But he didn't stop. A few days later, I started getting weird connection requests on LinkedIn from random profiles with no pictures. Then someone submitted a fake negative review about me on an anonymous employee feedback site, saying I was vindictive, hostile, and untrustworthy. HR was already monitoring the situation, so I forwarded the post to them immediately. They confirmed what I already suspected. The IP address matched one used by when he was still employed. He was trying to sabotage me from the outside now. That's when I decided I wasn't just going to play defense anymore. See, when HR had finished their investigation, I kept a copy of the sanitized report. It didn't include everything I'd submitted, but it outlined enough of misconduct to be useful. I also had the screenshots, the audio, and the timestamps. And most importantly, I had proof that he had accessed client files illegally. That was something our legal department took very seriously. So I wrote an email to one of our major clients. The same account had tampered with during his late-night flash drive stunt. I didn't accuse him directly. I just said, "Hi, I wanted to flag a data irregularity your team might want to review from last quarter," and attached the relevant log file. The client got back to us within hours. Turns out they had noticed something strange, but hadn't been able to pin it down. Now, with the timestamped evidence, they linked it to syninterference, and they were pissed. They launched their own internal review and informed our company they might pursue legal options if we didn't take immediate steps to prevent similar incidents. That kicked off a whole new chain reactions. I was brought into multiple meetings with legal, IT, and, not to be reprimanded, this time they wanted my input. They even asked if I'd be willing to be part of a new internal committee focused on data security and ethical compliance. Basically, they wanted to turn me from a victim into a watchdog. And I said yes. Meanwhile was unraveling. A former texted me a screenshot from his Instagram. He'd posted a cryptic caption over a black background. "Loyalty is dead. Some people will sell you out just to look good." I almost laughed. This guy still thought he was the hero of his own story. I kept screenshots of everything. HR advised me to start a digital folder in case the harassment escalated, and it did. Someone slashed one of my tires in the office garage. I couldn't prove it was him, but the timing was suspicious. I filed a police report just in case and had the security cameras checked. No clear footage, but it added another layer to his pattern of behavior. Still, I kept showing up. I did my job. I mentored new hires. I helped clean up the mess left behind. People started seeing me not as the girl who got screwed over, but as the one who took control and cleaned house. Then one morning, I got an email that nearly made me choke on my coffee. It was from his personal account. He must used a VPN or burner to bypass the block. The subject line: "Let's talk." The message said, "You made your point, I lost everything, but we both know what happened between us wasn't all lies. I just want to hear your voice again, please." And just like that, he tried to reel me back in. Reading's email made my skin crawl, that fake sincerity, the manipulative plea. We both know what happened between us wasn't all lies. He actually thought I'd fall for it, again. But I wasn't the same girl he fooled months ago. This time I was ready. I didn't respond right away. I forwarded the message to HR and legal first. They asked me to keep a record but advised against direct communication. That was fine. I didn't want to talk, I wanted to finish this. So I set a trap. I created a new account under a fake name and replied from that, pretending to be curious, maybe even sympathetic. I wrote something like, I didn't expect to hear from you, I don't know if I can trust you. I left it vague, emotional, just enough to bait him. He bit hard. Over the next few days, spilled everything, his anger at the company, his regrets, and even admitted in writing that he might gone too far with the client files but did it out of desperation. He blamed stress. He blamed pressure. He blamed me. Every email was a gold mine. I waited until I had enough, then sent the whole thread to our legal team. They were stunned. It was the final nail in the coffin. With this, they could pursue a formal cease and desist and notify authorities if necessary. The company had already been considering legal action over the client data breach. Now, with his own confession in writing, game over. But I wasn't quite done. I found out that it applied to another firm in the area, a startup in tech marketing. I had a contact there, Maya, someone I met through a networking event months ago. We weren't close, but I reached out and casually asked if they were hearing. She mentioned they were finalizing an offer for a guy named, actually said he'd come highly recommended. I didn't say much, just asked, would you want to see something that might change your mind? I sent her a redacted version of the internal report, leaving out confidential names but including the facts: plagiarism, misconduct, client data tampering. Then I told her to talk to our company's legal if she needed verification. The next day, Maya called me. She said, Kelly, thank you, we were about to give him full access to a major campaign. This could have been a disaster. They pulled the offer, he never got the jobs. He tried to email me again, this time from another burner, accusing me of ruining his future and never knowing how to forgive. I blocked that one too. Let him scream into the void. Because while he was spiraling, I was finally moving forward. Officially promoted me not just back to my old position but higher. I was now a senior analyst with a small team under me. I got a raise, a real one, and a bonus for the internal security reforms I helped build. People started coming to me for advice, not gossip. I earned their trust not with office politics but with results. I rebuilt my name piece by piece. I also learned something about myself. I could be underestimated, manipulated, even knocked down, but I wouldn't stay there, and if you came for me, I'd come back smarter, sharper, and I'd make damn sure you remembered it. You'd think with out of the picture, blocked from every angle, disgraced in front of clients, and blacklisted from jobs he didn't deserve, that I could finally breathe. And I could. For the first time in months, my mornings didn't start with dread. I wasn't double-checking my emails for fake complaints. I wasn't bracing for another shoe to drop. I actually started smiling again, genuinely. I even took a weekend trip out of town with my sister, first time I'd done anything for myself in a year. But still, something lingered. Not fear, not anger even, just residue. You don't go through that kind of betrayal without scars, even if they're invisible. Had nearly destroyed me socially, professionally, emotionally, and it wasn't even personal for him. I was just a stepping stone, a soft target. That's what haunted me the most. Not that he did it out of some twisted vendetta, but because to him it was just strategy. So I decided to finish the story the right way, not just for me, but for anyone else who might been in my shoes. I wanted to make sure couldn't pull the same con on someone else later, somewhere else with a new name and a cleaned up. And I knew exactly how to do it. Had mentioned once back when things between us were friendly, that he had a favorite online forum where he gave career advice. I remembered the name, something like a mix of tech bros and freelance marketing tips. I found the forum again one night, and sure enough, there he was, posting under the handle at Growth Hack King. He'd been silent for a while, probably licking his wounds, but before that, he'd been prolific. Threads titled How I Got Promoted in 6 Months, The Office is a Game, Learn to Win, and Why Playing Nice is for Losers. It made me sick to read. He was openly bragging about manipulation as if it were skill, no remorse, no lessons learned. So I made a burner account of my own. I posted a detailed thread titled, I worked with a snake, here how he operated and got caught. I left out names, companies, anything identifying, but I described everything he did, how he built fake relationships, sabotaged access logs, and tried to spin it all as hustle. I included anonymous quotes from internal emails, blurred screenshots of real file access timestamps, and a timeline of events that any halfway intelligent reader could follow. The thread blew up. People replied with similar stories. Some even said, "I think I worked with this guy," or "This sounds like someone who applied to my company." A few mods reached out asking if it was real. I sent them redacted documents and links to public business filings showing his recently dissolved freelance LLC, proof that this wasn't a made-up parable. The best part, a recruiter chimed in and said, "This is exactly why we vet people harder now. These types try to slip through the cracks." I wasn't out to ruin's life. I was out to shine a floodlight on how people like him operate. If he wanted to manipulate systems, fine, but not without a warning label stapled to his digital reputation. After that, I stopped checking the thread. It had taken on a life of its own. I felt clean, like I'd shed the last piece of the mess he dragged me into. Back at work, things were better than ever. I'd earned real respect, not because of pity or revenge, but because I stood back up and did the job better than anyone expected. I mentored 2 new hires who reminded me a lot of myself a year ago, eager, unsure, trying to navigate office politics without losing their integrity. I told them always be kind but never naive. I'd learned that the hard way. A few months later, our company hosted an industry networking event. Tons of professionals, execs, recruiters, the whole works. I was asked to speak on a panel about workplace ethics and data security. When I stepped up to that mic, I looked out at the crowd and thought, he's not here, but if he were, this would be the final nail. I told the story, anonymized but honest, of how internal sabotage can derail careers and how unchecked ambition becomes rot. I talked about how easy it is to miss the signs and how recovery takes more than policy. It takes people willing to speak up. The applause was real, so was the clarity. After the event, I was approached by a woman in her 30s who said, "Your story, something just like that happened to me. I didn't say anything, I wish I had." I hugged her. I didn't say, "You should have." I just said, "You're here now, that counts." And that's where I'll leave it. Last I heard, he moved to a different state, probably trying to start over. Maybe he changed his name, maybe he's conning someone new, but now I know better and I've made sure others do too. Because the next Kelly he tries to step on, she'll be ready.